You think history's a bunch of names and dates that never change, and your history teacher who hates you makes you memorize them for no reason at all? Wrong. History is alive! Historians are constantly finding new documents, artifacts, archaeology, stories, translations. What if I told you one of the most powerful trading empires of all time was all but lost to history until 100 years ago today? Even the people living on top of it didn't know anything about it. Talking about a sea-based trading empire, powerful enough to serve as the main trading post between India and China. Today's illustrative example, the Srivijaya Empire. What up? I'm Ben Freeman from freemanpedia.com, where I try to translate AP World Modern to people like you around the world. And in that pursuit, I find holes in the content where there's not a lot of resources for you. That's where we here at Illustrative Examples step in. And so today I'm taking a relatively obscure trading empire that was only found 100 years ago and breaking it down. But it's way too early in the morning to start yelling words like thalassocracy and Mahayana at you. So let's get some context. Contextualization is just taking something rather specific and putting it into the grander story of world history. It's the Star Wars crawl. You know, it's that thing at the beginning of the movie where they put it up there to let you know what's going on before you're just thrown into some random action and fighting and killing. You need some background. Who's this guy? What's that about? Why am I talking about this at all? That's contextualization. On your essays, you're going to need to let the reader know what you're talking about and what context you're talking about it, as opposed to just specifically describing one thing. You need to put it into the greater picture. I've said this 1,000 times, this is a mandatory skill. SAQ, DBQ, LEQ, most of the Qs are going to have this as a thing you need to do. So make sure that you are contextualizing whatever it is you're saying in any essay you're writing. Okay, 1 minute on the clock. Okay, Freeman, keep it brief. Don't ramble like an idiot. You look like an idiot every time you put up a minute clock. And you can't do it even though you have the power to edit and easily cut it down. You've yet to do it. Come on. Let's go. AP World History starts with 2 units, both covering the era 1200 to 1450. The first one is called the Global Tapestry, and it's a global check-in on the different regions. Like today, we're in Southeast Asia. Unit 2 is Networks of Exchange, which is all of the connections that weave the global tapestry together. You see what I did there? And 2 of the biggest regions in the entire course are India and China. In this period, India is dominated by a thing called the Delhi Sultanate. Centered in Delhi, it is an Islamic sultanate that rules over northern India, while southern India is dominated by a collection of Hindu states. China, on the other hand, is a bit trickier, with 3 different dynasties ruling over it. And if you think that's confusing, and oh no, there's 3 different groups ruling over China, the Mongols will be here soon, and it'll just be them, so that'll make it easier on you. So if you jump from Unit 1, where you're just checking in on the places, to Unit 2, where you see the networks of exchange, you're going to see between India and China, the most famous is going to be the Silk Road, connecting them overland. But don't sleep on those maritime trade routes that take you through Southeast Asia. And as the course begins, there's no bigger player in the trade game than the Srivijaya Empire. Srivijaya was a trading empire that lasted 700 years and served the trade route between India and China. Srivijaya dominated the waterways of Southeast Asia for 700 years. As a trading empire that also served as a Buddhist center of learning for India, Southeast Asia, and China. All right, did I do it? That was succinct. I took it from this big, broad, the opening units of the course, and I took it down to a specific trade empire, talking about what's important about it along the way. Did I do it? Did I do it? This is impossible. You know, I control the timer. You think I would just edit it down and make myself look good? I just don't think it's possible. I think it's physically, humanly not possible for someone to speak for under a minute on the Srivijaya Empire and its context. So don't worry. I guess that was close. Anyways, keep your contextualization short and to the point. Don't ramble on and on like I do. It's only worth a point, but it is worth a point, so make sure you do it. All right, enough contextualization. Let's just get to the example. Today's example takes us to Southeast Asia. And I'm not talking mainland Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, none of that stuff. I'm talking about you head out to the sea, out to the island, out to the archipelago. And for us, today, that's the Srivijaya Empire. Okay, heads up. I'm gonna use a very scary word here, so if you need to cover your ears and come back and watch this later, that's fine. This is a big scary word, but it shouldn't scare you because it's an awesome word and you can use it all the time and sound historical. Okay, Srivijaya was a thalassocracy. Did you get that? A thalassocracy. That's how you describe Srivijaya. I know. Calm down. It just means an empire where most of your empire is overseas. Think the British Empire, the Dutch Empire, the Phoenicians. That's a thalassocracy. Srivijaya was a thalassocracy. And for Srivijaya, it's all about real estate. Location, location, location. If you're in a boat and you're trying to get from India to China, you have to go through Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from China to India, you have to go to Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from Champa to India, you got to go through Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from India to Cambodia, you got to go to Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're trying to go from Japan to India, you got to go to Srivijaya. If you're in a boat and you're in East Africa and you're trying to go to China, you gotta go to Srivijaya. If you're in the water going from the Indian Ocean to East Asia, you gotta go through Srivijaya. And because of that location between India and China, it became the primary trading hub between the two. The capital, we call it today Palembang. Back then, the Chinese called it Zhugang, which of course means, yeah, you said it, giant harbor. That's how they referred to it. It's a giant harbor where we trade our stuff, so your capital is now named Big Trading Harbor, and that's where we'll go trade our stuff. And it wasn't just one port or a couple ports, it was massive. A Persian trader said with his fastest ships, he couldn't reach all of the places within the Srivijaya Empire. It would take well over 2 years to do that. So this isn't one little trading post empire with just a few little spots along the way. This is a massive network. The location that brought them all the trade was 2 straits that they controlled. First, the Sundra Strait. Second, the Malacca Strait. Look at that map. Try to get between India and China and not go that way. What are you gonna go, Papua New Guinea? Australia? Come on, you're wasting your time. You're gonna go through Srivijaya. And Srivijaya was Southeast Asia's hottest trading spot. This place had everything. Rice, cotton, indigo, silver, aloe, resin, camphor, ivory, rhino tusk, tin, gold, rattan, timber, gems, exotic birds, iron, sandalwood, pepper, cinnamon, ceramics, cardamom. They even had, you know the thing, like how the Dutch are all obsessed with spices and they go find this place and they call them the Spice Islands. They didn't discover the Spice Islands, there were people on the Spice Islands. They called them the Banda Islands, and that's the only spot on earth where you could get clove or nutmeg. So don't act like you're super special, Dutch people. You're basically Columbus. You found something that people already found. And they weren't just a series of random people peddling on the streets. This was organized. They had huge warehouses where they brought in all of these products and stored them for an ease of transfer at the markets that made Srivijaya the go-to market in the region. My favorite part about this trading empire is that the Chinese, when they went to Southeast Asia, just assumed that everything there was from Srivijaya and that Srivijayans made all of this stuff. Imagine going into Walmart and being like, wow, y'all make all this stuff here? I gotta trade here more often. They don't make a lot of stuff there. It's just that's where it's being traded. But don't tell the Chinese that, because then they could just go get it themselves. So due to their rising power, Srivijaya quickly became a tributary to the Song Empire, along with other local powers like the Champa. Remember Champa? Champa rice. The fast rice. Do you remember that? But here's what's weird. College Board doesn't care about them as a trading empire. They don't. They're the most massive trading empire, one of the most recent major archaeological finds in the history of the planet, and they don't care about the trade at all. They don't care about the list of all the things I said. What they do want you to know is that it's an example of a Buddhist state, meaning it is run by Buddhists, for Buddhists, with Buddhist interests at heart, and Buddhist missionaries, and trips to India and China. It is, at first, a trading empire, but also it's run by Buddhists. I mean, think of it. They are the trading hub between India, where Buddhism is from, and China, where Buddhism is raging at the time. And trade routes, after all, don't just bring trade and gold and tin. They also bring ideas, and one of those ideas was Buddhism. Before we get into any about how Buddhism is important in Southeast Asia and why they're illustrative, let's talk about the elephant in the room for a minute. 101 years ago, no one even knew this place existed. People that lived on top of the ruins just assumed they were some other kind of ruins and had no clue that this was actually an ancient Buddhist trading empire. Because it was 100 years ago, in 1920, a French historian started connecting the dots of all the different evidence out there of other empires, other people, other traders, other leaders talking about this one place where there was all of this trade going on. Accounts of Indians, Indian monks, Indian leaders, Sri Lankan leaders, Chinese emperors, Persians, Buddhists, all these different groups of people are going around talking about this one place. The problem is, they're all using a different name. So if you're just randomly flipping through history, you're going to be like, oh, there are 8 different places to go trade. But in reality, those 8 places were one. So what the Chinese called Sanfoki or Foshi, and what the Javanese called Suvarnabhumi, and the Arabs called Sribuza, they were all the same thing. And it's not just linguistics and spellings and pronunciations that were different. So you have these people back home in their places talking about how this is where we go trade, this is the trade spot to go, and that could be any number of places. But luckily, there were people who actually went there and wrote a lot. And merchants aren't necessarily always writing down about cultural things around them. But I tell you who does do a lot of that, those are religious pilgrims, and in this case, the Buddhist monks. And seeing how much this was such a maritime trade route, you can imagine all the other world travelers you'll learn about in later sections are going to go through this area, talking about your Ibn Battutas, your Marco Polos, etc. So I could be like your stupid textbook and be like, here's a source from this guy, and here's what this guy said, and here's what some other random guy said. But no, we're going to talk to one guy and see what he says. His name? Yijing. Yijing was a Chinese Buddhist monk who was one of the hundreds of Chinese Buddhist monks who made the journey from China to India. This is a global dude. He was from China. He took a Persian boat from Guangzhou to Srivijaya to get to India. This guy isn't some scrub pilgrim. This guy's going to the #1 Buddhist university on the planet. At the time, it was called Nalanda University. And at the time, it was the #1 spot for any Buddhist pilgrim to congregate and learn more about Buddhism near the homeland of Buddhism. And I know I wasn't going to mention anyone else, but this is where Zhuangzhang meant. If you know anything about the monkey story or Journey to the West, very famous Chinese story, this is one of the spots he stayed at. I think he stayed there for about 2 years. But our man Yi Jing stayed there for 11 years. Think of it the way the great scholars and athletes of today flock to Clemson University. It's kind of like that. Clemson would destroy Nalanda at football. I'd love to see that. But Nalanda would destroy Clemson at Buddhism, so maybe not. Anyways, back to Yi Jing. He spent 11 years studying Buddhism here at Nalanda University. And I know I keep saying university. It's not a university in the sense you would think. It's more a collection of libraries and scholars learning together, more than, say, like a campus with dorms and terrible food. So Yi Jing spent 11 years here with the purpose of studying Buddhism, collecting texts, translating texts. Here's the problem, though. If you're going from China to India, that's quite a long trip, especially back then. So Srivijaya is a perfect place to stop. And India is not always accessible by sea. The monsoon winds are no joke. So some people chose to wait out the monsoon season by hanging out in Srivijaya. Yi Jing was one of those guys. He stayed there not only on his trip to India, but on his trip back, both times for over 6 months. And this isn't just some random hotel where he's flipping through books. He noticed that there were a ton of Buddhists here. And in fact, this was the one spot in Southeast Asia where Buddhist scholars congregated along merchant trade routes. If you wonder why Srivijaya wasn't found so early on, they didn't leave that much stuff behind, but the stuff they did leave behind are Buddhist stupas and statues and other Buddhist stuff just all over Srivijaya and Sumatra. So in writing about Srivijaya, Yi Jing said this, quote, "In the fortified city of Palembang, Buddhist priests number more than 1,000, whose minds are bent on learning and good practice. They investigate and study all the subjects that exist, just as in India. Their rules and ceremonies are not at all different. If a Chinese priest wishes to go to the West in order to hear and read the original scriptures, he had better stay here 1 or 2 years and practice the proper rules." End quote. So in the Global Tapestry unit, if your teacher's like, "Students, please tell teacher of an example of a Buddhist state in Southeast Asia in the Global Tapestry period," you better respect Yi Jing and let your teacher know about the once forgotten thalassocratic great trading empire of Srivijaya. But how can this actually help you out? You're in luck. I have found 2 examples from recent AP World History exams where you could flex your new Srivijaya knowledge and earn yourself some points. So let's look at some exam examples. Alright, so like I said, there are 2 examples from recent years that you can use here, so we'll go through them. They're both LEQ examples. Now, Srivijaya doesn't pop up by name. It is a relatively new thing, kind of like past things that we've been going through the illustrative examples. The ones I've been choosing to make these videos on tend to be the newer ones, so this one wouldn't have popped up as an example 10 years ago. But I was able to find 2 from the past 3 years, and last year was the weird pandemic DBQ, so that doesn't count. So the last 2 full tests they've given, there have actually been 2 of these in the LEQ section, so let's take a closer look. All right, back in 2018, the second LEQ. Remember 2018? That was nice. Anyway, the second LEQ reads like this. So they give you a little background on it, a little background knowledge. In the period 600 to 600, different factors led to the emergence and spread of new religions and belief systems such as Buddhism, Confucianism, and Christianity. Thanks for that, College Board. Now you can show me the prompt. Develop an argument that evaluates how, by the way, develop an argument. Get used to seeing that. That's something they want you to do. An argument is, imagine you're in a debate and you need to pick a side, and on that side you need to stand up and make points that support your argument. That's all they want in these LEQs, is you to make this argument and support it with information. Develop an argument that evaluates how such factors led to the emergence or spread of one or more religions in this time period. So they're asking about different factors that led these religions to spread. Well, the growth of trade is the primary answer they're actually looking for on these, and the trade routes. The only problem on this one, though, is our good friends at Srivijaya started it around 650 CE. That's going to put us on the other side of it. Now, depending on the question and how they decide to score them, that may be close enough, but that may be too far away. However, this was before the new curriculum, so maybe in future iterations of the test, you can see 600 BC, that's old. In future iterations of the test, they may have something to the effect of from 600 CE to 1450 CE, and then that's Srivijaya time. But otherwise, it's the same concept. If you just said that trade was one, then you're going to get a thesis, and you throw some background in about trade routes like I did in my contextualization a minute ago, and then you start adding evidence, you're going to be fine. The other one's from 2019, also an LEQ. Let's look at that one. In the period 600 BCE to 600 CE, so once again, we're kind of out of luck here on the time span, but otherwise it's the same idea. So again, in future iterations of the test, they will not go back this far. So you're going to be looking for 600, probably 600 CE to maybe 1200 if they wanted to do like an early thing. I doubt they would, but if they wanted to go 600 to 1450, that would probably make more sense. So imagine that we're doing that because again, the course has changed. So the rise of large-scale empires led to increasing regional and trans-regional trade. Okay. Interesting. Now, here comes the prompt. Develop an argument. Told you, you're going to have to start developing arguments. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the rise of one or more empires contributed to an increase in trade in this time period. One empire rose and built a large trade network that helped everyone around it by being the new trade center in the region. Srivijaya. So those are two. Again, the curriculum has changed recently, so the time periods are a little bit off, but if you're looking for one of these ideas and you needed an illustrative example of a Buddhist state or even a trading state, Srivijaya gets you both there. Alright, thanks for watching. And once again, I'm Ben Freeman from Freemanpedia.com. I hope these videos are helping. I hope this actually helps you out. If you Google around, maybe you can find better videos, but I think these are pretty good and kind of focused on you, the AP World History Modern student. If not, say something in comments, make suggestions down below. Tell me what I should be including, or what's not good about this, or what is good about this, or my teacher made me do this, I hate my teacher, help me destroy them. Anything like that, just give me some feedback. I'm going to keep making them because, again, this stuff isn't out here. If you're Googling Srivijaya Empire, you're going to get a lot of weird stuff. So I think this is more focused on you. You know exactly what it's for, what the College Board wants from you. So if you like this stuff, then hit subscribe. That helps me out. Otherwise, good luck on the AP test in May, and I will see you next time. Thank you.